to welcome everybody to the workshop. The last time we did one of these was, let's say, June 9th, 2015. And at that meeting we said, yeah, we should do one of these every year. So that was 3 years now. So we're looking forward to this. You guys should be looking forward to chatting with each other about what your issues are and learning. I've got strict instructions. 7 o'clock means 7 o'clock. So that's it. We're trying to hopefully stick to these two issues that are on the agenda, the 105 Broadway Annex and the Interlocal Agreement. But in the meantime, I think Mr. Enright and Councilwoman Hubbard, Vice Chair Hubbard, might have a few things to say. All right.
First, welcome to the Port of Palm Beach, and I'm honored to be here today to continue the workshop we had in 2015 with the City of Riviera Beach. First, I would like to introduce my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Catherine Waldron, Commissioner Wayne Richards, Commissioner Blair Sicklin, Commissioner Peyton MacArthur, our Executive Director, Mr. Amira. I'll go to the next row. We have our attorney, Mr. Pickens. Also, are you going to kill me? Larry Smith. We have our CH2 in here, used to be CH2 in here, Casey Long. We have Mr. Hearn, who's over our security. We have our engineer, Jose. We have our financial person over finance, Mr. Paul Lizinski. We have Jerica Square, who is over our development, marketing. And we have Mr. Carl Baker, who's Mr. Port of Palm Beach, I call. He knows everything. Also, we have our reporter, Ms. Cougar. I think I missed our clerk. Our clerk, Bernice, is here. Bernice Howard. She joined us after Peggy decided to go up north. We have our Beatrice. I was not going to forget her. She takes care of public relations. No, our HR. Heidi, who takes care of public relations. And then we have Takara, who's been here for years. And we also have our IT person, Mr. Richard. Okay, any others I missed? And on behalf of the Port of Palm Beach Commissioners, welcome to the Port. Now I have Mrs. Hubbard, who will introduce the council. I received a letter before she comes from the chair, Tanya Davis Johnson, and she sent a letter expressing her absence. She could not be here because she has a county meeting, and so we're just going to tell her the next time, don't forget us. She's going to have to switch it around.
Thank you. Good evening, Lynn Hubbard, Chair Pro Tem for the City of Riviera Beach Council. We are indeed glad and honored to be here with you tonight in order to continue our conversation so that we might address these two issues to expand our possibilities. And at this time, I would like to go ahead and introduce the rest of the council and some of our staff that are here. We have Terrence Davis here on the end, Kashamba Miller-Anderson, Mrs. Dr. Botel, and as Dr. Enright stated, our Honorable Chairwoman is at another county meeting. And on the back row, we'll start here with our City Manager, Karen Hoskins. We have Mr. Willie Horton, our Assistant City Manager / Utility Director. We have our Chief of Police, Mr. Madden, our Interim City Community Development Services, Jeff Gannon, our Fire Chief, Mr. Reginald Doran, and we have Terrence Bailey, our Interim Public Works Director, CRA Director. On the end, we have Scott Evans. And in the audience, there is our illustrious attorney, Mr. Andrew DeGraff and Wright, and we have the Mayor's Chief of Staff, Mrs. Debbie Isaacs, Mrs. Pascal. That is the Chairwoman's Chief of Staff. And we have my legislative aide, Hope Genty, and Regina Williams, Mr. Davis's legislative aide. And we have Walter somewhere in the building. That's our TV director. So, and we have our building official, Lady Marge Goldwire, in the back there. Okay. So again, we want to thank you for the opportunity to come here tonight to continue this discussion. We always look forward to the possibilities that we have here with the Port. And again, thank you.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. Before we get started, because we have a total new council since 2005, maybe one or two are here, and on the Port, Commissioner Richards was here, and Blair Sicklin. I would like to just go over a couple points in how, over the years, the Port of Palm Beach has worked hand in hand with the city. In most areas, when you have ports, the port operate alone. They're not really involved in things with the city. No police, nothing. But the Port of Palm Beach, over the years, we have worked hand in hand to be partners with the city and also the residents. And in 2003, before that, let's take the first thing I want to talk about just for a second, 13th Street. The city wanted to construct 13th Street. And when they started way out west. And they constructed 13th Street until they arrived to Dixie Highway, which is Barack Obama Highway. The city did not have the funds to continue, but the citizens and the residents wanted 13th Street to continue all the way to the Tiki. The Tiki was there at that time, which to the marina, the old marina. The Port of Palm Beach, along with the Department of Transportation, FDOT, we contributed. We came up with $11,200,000 to complete the project because the citizens wanted it to occur. And that's just one way how we work with the city. In addition to that, over the years, we were asked to do the beautification of the street. And the Port of Palm Beach did not shake their head and say no. We went on because we wanted to be good partners to the city, and we also thought it was important that 13th Street did not stop at Old Dixie, and it continued because if residents wanted to go to the marina, that was a straight shot into the marina, right down 13th, and so we did it, and we made it happen for our residents and for the city. That's just one thing that we've done over the years. Since then, let's update and let's go to the police department. The police contract services, we go through the city, and we're the only port in the state of Florida who uses the city they're located in to service the port. Most of the ports, we can also use the Florida Fish and Wildlife. We can use the Florida Marine Patrol at half the price. But no, we want to work with the city because we're concerned with what? With safety. So that's very important. So the port, for the services from the police department, we spend $219,000 a year, which now there are many other things that we've given the city. And I want Mr. Hearn just to go over some of two or three of the items. Okay, you don't have to come up. We can just go. Since 2001 to 2011, you see the handheld fingerprint readers, the software connection to Falcon, the warehouse, the hardware installation. Then in 13, we have 2 FITS license plate readers. We have 5 mobile license plate readers. Then in 14, these are items we purchased for the city of Riviera Beach for the police department. Now, because we're a port, we don't have to really do this. We can be like the other ports. We can give it to any entity. We can give these items to the city of West Palm Beach or any of the other entities. But we work with the city to ensure the safety at the port and around our area. But we really want to continue to do this. And just recently, the city asked us for, how much did you ask? Chief of Police, you can say, you can contest to this. The city currently just asked us for $288,300, $330 for these items. And what the port would normally do, we would write a grant, then receive the funds, and then give them to the city. We don't have to, but because we want to continue to be good partners with the city, we do. Now, I know that not one of you can find one port in the state of Florida who does this. They don't do it. But because we're concerned, or we can even give it to another department. We can give it to any of the other people I named. We can give it to Florida Fish and Wildlife. We can give it to the Marine Patrol. We can give it to the Sheriff, City of West Palm Beach. But we don't have to give anything away. But I just want you to see what we've been doing continuously over the years to improve the city, to help our neighbors, and to be a good neighbor, because there's no other port who does this in the state of Florida. Let's go on. And the last little thing I just want to just tip on is the stormwater runoff. We currently pay the city about $6,000 to $8,000. And if you can see where the red is, and if you can see the blue line, the pipes go right from the Port of Palm Beach. And over the years, now there's something that's very important about this, because if the city pipes did not connect to the Port of Palm Beach pipes, then what would happen? It would be flooded all in those areas. So we assist with that. And what's so significant is that we don't use the pipes. The runoff is only from the city. So the port today, we're not draining any water through the city storm system, only the city. So we just want you to know that we're doing something to ensure that, the city does not flood. In addition to that, with the Lake Lagoon, if you look at the lake, that when it goes to the port, everything is filtered and it goes to the port. So these are just some of the things I want you to think about and let you really, really take a good look at the port and what we've done and what we continue to do to assist the city in any way. Are there any comments from any of my commissioners? You want to add anything? Mr. Richards?
At this point, no. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to give you an overview of what and how we worked with the city over the years. Thank you. Mr. Bushman?
Madam Chair. Mr. Bushman.
I'm good. Is this okay? Can people hear me?
I don't even know. Is this on?
That's yours. Just put it over there.
Mr. Bushman.
So thank you. Forgive me. Oh, I'm sorry.
City Council would like, maybe, I know at least myself, I'd like to respond to the great opening statement that was just made. Over the last few years, it's been very clear, as Commissioner McCarthy and your staff has been the liaison for the city and myself on behalf of the port. We have done a wonderful job of just keeping a line of communications and controlling the temperature, how we work well together. One thing I must add to that slide is that out of all the ports in the state of Florida, there's no port that has a neighboring city that have the police department that provides level of service like Riviera Beach does. That shows great senior staff of Chief Madden, former Chief Williams, and many of those to come. Those shot spotters, as you can see, the city of West Palm Beach is now moving in that right direction because they're seeing what Riviera Beach is doing as we are producing number one. So we're doing this together. I think we would like to move forward to show that we continue to work together. And one of the things I like to see added to that slide is, and we had this discussion with me and Manny and Mr. McCarthy, Commissioner McCarthy, as it relates to jobs. You guys are tenants. You're in the city of Riviera Beach. How do we create a system in place of communication so where we can have a flow of jobs where Riviera Beach residents have real opportunities, because we have a lot of skill and trades that are here, but we need to make sure that they know they have a chance to get these jobs. So as we move forward about us working together, it's about all of us working together.
Anybody else? Ms. Hubbard?
Thank you. Let's see.
Is it on?
That was on.
You're good.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Enright, indeed, the port has done great things that have benefited the city as well. And I think that with all the, from the law enforcement side especially, I know that you and your colleagues see and saw the benefit of making those legal contributions, because it in turn provides security for the port, so that there are the necessary tools in place to protect both yourselves and the entire city of Riviera Beach. Because you guys have worked well and have done things, I think we've patiently worked well, with you, and I know that you can attest to that. There has been a long time with the, for us to get to this point, because, in all good conscience, we gave up MLK and closed it off because, we were expecting to have the other access. So we have indeed, appreciated, recognized, everything that the port has done, and that's, exactly why we are here today, because we continue to express the patience of getting another access to U.S. Highway 1. And we do thank you for all the things that we have been able to collaborate on here in the city as well.
It's nice of you to say, Ms. Hubbard.
I'd like to say something.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me.
That's okay. I want to thank Dr. Enright for coming up and pointing out those things. And as neighbors, it is my hope that we're able to work together and come to some sort of resolution that we have not been able to come to in the last few years. I probably won't say a whole lot, but I do know that, my whole purpose in being here tonight is to make sure that we're able to work together. And I do recognize the things that the port have done for us over the last few years. So I thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Forgive me for not introducing myself earlier. My name is Michael Busha, and I will be your facilitator for the short time for the evening. And I don't have a referee shirt on. I mean facilitator. And everything you've said, I was going to add in here on the purpose of the meeting, but you've said it all. I mean, you guys are neighbors. You have a long history of growing together. You owe it to yourselves to understand what your issues are. You need to come back and chat with each other once in a while just to get up to speed at what your issues are and try and resolve them. The only ground rules I have are everything that's in the civility and decorum part of the agenda. There's 4 bullets there. And I would add that all beepers and cell phones, if you could put them on simmer. I'd ask that you each listen to each other. Wait till everybody finishes if anybody's talking. And the last thing I would just ask you, can we please agree to just, we've got a short time here, if we can just stick to the 105 Broadway piece, the land use change, and the interlocal agreement discussion. We can just stick to those 2 things. I think by 7 o'clock we'll have something that we can walk out of here with and be happy to come back and see each other again. So looking forward to that. So with that, unless there's any other questions about how this is going to go, I'm happy to introduce Larry Smith, one of the port's attorneys. He's going to take a minute and sort of walk you through a chronology of the annex property, the 105 Broadway property, and sort of give you some context for that, and hopefully we can have some resolution.
Thank you, Mike. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Larry Smith. I'm with Gary, Dietrich, and Ryan, port attorney. We're port attorneys. Greg Picken does the port's work, but I'm helping out with this annex property. And last time I did this, addressed this annex property in public, was at the city council meeting, Riviera Beach. We had first reading, and then there was some discussion about, the road that was supposed to go through there and so forth and so on. So Greg and Mr. Miller and I took the liberty of doing a timeline, and we tried to make it as succinct as possible. It's in your package, I think, that was passed, that was given out. But I'm just going to go through it real quick because we don't have much time here. And stop me if you have questions. Don't wait for me to finish. You can stop me and ask anything you want. But generally speaking, the annex, what we call the annex property, which is the property right next to West Palm Beach, just south of the power lines, was intended to be the 710 connector between what's now Barack Obama Highway and US 1. And that's going back to, even the 90s, I think. At a point in time, DOT condemned that property. That property was a trailer court and a pretty good Chinese restaurant up on US 1. I've been around a long time, so I remember that. And I remember the Bazaar International, which is now part of the port. So I've been around that long. So the DOT spent a lot of money. I can't tell you how much, but I'm sure it was in the millions of dollars to condemn the property. And then they decided to do a notice of intent that they're going to go across the FEC railroad tracks. And the FEC, Florida East Coast Railway, had a different opinion, and FEC, instituted a lawsuit, a administrative lawsuit, but a lawsuit nonetheless. That was 2002. And so the port joined in that lawsuit. The city was requested to join in by Greg Picken at the request of the DOT attorney, and the city chose not to join in the lawsuit. But we were in the lawsuit on the side of DOT to try and get the crossing. At a point in time, the litigation went on for probably a year and a half, and at a point in time, and Greg actually handled the lawsuit on behalf of the port. At a point in time, DOT basically threw in the towel, said, "We're not going to win this case against the FEC," and so they did what is called a notice of intent to, relinquish jurisdiction, and basically that's a dismissal of the case. So DOT dismissed, actually asked that the case be dismissed, and the hearing officer, who is the judge in the administrative case, dismissed the case. So that was the end of the lawsuit. Then there were some other activities that happened, and it really languished. The whole thing kind of languished between 2003 and 2011. After the case got closed in 2003 and 2011, there was, that's when the DOT ultimately conveyed the property to the port. But in between, a lot happened, which isn't really on the list, but I know that the MPO had a study going on. There were some discussions about whether DOT could do a flyover over the tracks over here, or a tunnel under the tracks, and that was met with resistance from both the city of Riviera Beach, is my recollection, and the city of West Palm Beach. The flyover, my recollection is it was going to ruin the neighborhoods to the west. There would be so much property that would have to be taken. That didn't fly. And so at a certain point in 2011, about maybe 2010, it might have been, DOT declared that this was going to be surplus property because they figured they aren't going to get an at-grade crossing for the road. And that's kind of what drove the nail into the heart of the whole road project at that point. When they declared it surplus property, they leased it to the port. So the port's had it under lease since July of 2011, or had it under lease at that time. And then a few other things happened. The MPO, which had been discussing it and doing a study to decide the alternatives, abandoned that and decided they were going to terminate the study. And that happened in mid-2011. And the city of Riviera Beach's representative was in that unanimous decision to terminate the study. So the port and the city have kind of been alongside each other. And some of the opening remarks, this was the port and the city kind of agreed on the whole thing with regard to the road all the way along. And at a point, the DOT, in November of 2011, DOT conveyed the property to the port for public purpose. And the next thing that's when I kind of got familiar with this piece of annex property, because the contractor that was going to build the FPL plant wanted to use it for staging and so forth. So we took it, I handled it on behalf of the port to get the zoning and the proper use approvals for that to happen. And in the process of that, we were successful in getting West Palm, Riviera Beach, and the port to execute a tri-party agreement basically outlining how you would use the property. certain lighting restrictions, certain drainage restrictions, certain landscaping restrictions. And so that tri-party agreement got done in February of 2012. And then the contractor used it for, I think, 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, and that brings us to 2015. And so the port decided they needed to, get busy and try to figure out what to do with the property. And so we've been before the city council. Casey Long's basically been carrying the water on this project, but we've been in front of the city of Riviera Beach, not just the council, but planning and zoning and staff and so forth. And I think we got started on that about a year ago, Casey? A little more, maybe? Okay, so we've been at it for a while, but we're really back in earnest. And that's when we came to the city of Riviera Beach for that first reading. Up to that point, we've been to planning and zoning, and we got a unanimous approval on recommending it to you guys, city council. And so anyway, we'd like to get back on track with this. We were kind of waiting for this meeting. When we had the first reading, you pretty much directed staff, let's see if we can get this meeting together. And so here we are, and we're going to be, as a result of this meeting, we're going to be coming back in to try to finalize the use approval. And basically, let me say this, basically the use that is being requested here is substantially similar, almost identical to the tri-party agreement. I've had the opportunity in the last few days to kind of look at that old tri-party agreement, and Casey and I have been over this when he was, doing the application for the zoning, and it's pretty much the same thing. I mean, if anything, I think they're probably a little more restrictive use controls in what's being currently requested. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll be happy to come back up. I'm at your pleasure. At your mercy. Okay. At your mercy. Yes, ma'am.
I know there was some concern on the part of at least one of our constituents about the fact that the port had maybe made a promise, or maybe some conversation was had about either another overpass or another tunnel. And I did have in full disclosure, I did have a conversation and a presentation by Carl and Manny a couple of weeks ago, and it opened my eyes about the cost involved and the dangers involved in doing that kind of thing. I wonder if you would speak a little bit to that issue and why Riviera Beach rejected that as an idea.
Well, I don't know.
Or if we didn't, then why might have we?
I don't have any firsthand knowledge of that exactly, because I wasn't involved in it. When the at-grade crossing failed back in 2003, let's call it, that's when the DOT decided they were going to not pursue the at-grade crossing, and they abandoned the litigation. My understanding is there were some studies done, and the MPO had a study going on, and part of that, my recollection is that there was a flyover proposed to come from west of Barack Obama Highway. Oh, that's it. Well, there you go. I don't know who can address that more specifically, but
that's not the one. That's not the one. You had one going out 11th Street, west 11th, just south of 13th.
That I don't know about.
Well, these guys know that.
That I don't know.
I know, but these guys know that.
So let me tell you what I do know in response to Dr. Botel's question. What I understand is part of the study was to do a flyover on the annex property, from west of the annex property to US 1, get over the tracks on top of it. I don't think the tunnel was ever really seriously considered, but there was a lot of discussion about the flyover. And as I said before, my understanding is Riviera Beach didn't support that because it was going to ruin a lot of neighborhoods to the west. My understanding also is that West Palm Beach didn't like that so much because all of that property just south of the annex property is residential property. So that's what I know about it. And I don't know what these gentlemen are talking about on the 11th Street.
One of the things that
I can tell you.
Excuse me.
The only thing we're talking about is the annex property. So, and I think Larry answered the question. Big impacts to the neighborhoods. Regional Planning Council objected. Everybody objected to it, and they didn't want to see that happen. So everybody abandoned the plans for it. It was too expensive. It wasn't going to work. It didn't matter because FEC wasn't going to give access any.
Once-
FEC sued so that they could not go on those tracks. And when they sued, the only alternative they could come up with was something going over and under. Because FEC, when they sued the state of Florida, they just stopped. And so then the state of Florida.
Once the statement question I want to ask, once they gave up the lawsuit and turned the property back over to the port, at that point, did it allow the port an opportunity to go ahead and construct the road to US 1?
Well, there's no way to get to US 1 because FEC wouldn't allow access across it. You can't get across FEC. That's why they were doing these huge plans to fly over and go under. So.
Exactly.
So they couldn't do it.
Okay, my question was, once they gave up the lawsuit, that did not come with the permission or authority to access the FEC.
That wasn't going anywhere. No.
The FEC railroad. Okay, while we're here and on this point, the recommendation was made that we go back to MLK and come and push the security back further into the port, and we would go left to 11th Street to give an access for the city trucks into the Barack Obama highway.
That's something totally different than this.
No.
This is the piece that's south, all the way down by the annex.
I know
property,
exactly where it is, but
my understanding was this was a land use change that the port has asked for to go to general industrial on this piece, kind of what the tri-party agreement had asked was allowing the use for. Has nothing to do with any of that. That's a distraction. I know what that.
Okay, that's
I
not
know that piece stuff.
And my intent is not for it to be a distraction. So let me try to clarify.
Help me out with this then.
Yeah, let me try to help you out with this. Okay, two things are going on here. We're talking about the interlocal agreement, right?
Not yet. Not yet. That's coming.
Okay, there's two things on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay. The interlocal agreement as well as this the annex piece of property. And the reason that I bring up the items and the issues that I bring up in conjunction with the annex property is because, follow me on this now, is because we did close off MLK so that because we thought we were going to have access where we, at the same annex property, that we no longer can have access to. Now, be that as it may, it's FEC, FDOT, is the bottom line why we can't get there. But be that as it may, we can't get there. So what I'm saying to you is that before we annex this piece, we still need access. And one of the things that was brought up was a way that we might have access. And that was to push the entryway, the security or the entryway to the MLK back further. Once you cross the track, mind you, turning left to 11th Street, allowing the trucks to access eastward. Okay. So it's not that I don't understand the topic that we're on.
I'm not
it's the reason that that's the reason I brought it up.
So that's a piece that maybe the city would like to see as part of this. They'd like to maybe see that explored as part of this.
Yes.
As part of the land use. Sorry, I didn't understand. Now I do. So, all right. So that's something on the table, for the port and the city to consider if that's a condition maybe of something you'd like to see as a condition of approval to get this done. Because my understanding was with this, I know that's an important issue for you.
Mr. Bush.
That access piece is an important issue.
It is.
But also the port, the idea, my understanding what was really on the table was the land use amendment.
We
and I was trying to understand.
Conversation as counsel, so I'm not enough well versed in what you're proposing to make a comment about it. So I think we need to have a conversation internally about that before we even suggest that it might be part.
I wrote that down as one of the issues. That's been brought up. That the port and the city need to consider if they're going to process this land use amendment. I think that's fair. So
and that's fair.
It's down. So,
Mr. Bush.
Yes.
As you move forward, Is it the intent of this meeting to prepare for another meeting? So that, or are you asking us to make a decision today with
No,
1
no
hour?
decisions today.
Okay.
What I hopefully
don't feel like
will
we're
be
rushing through
some
anything.
mutual understanding about whether or not this land use amendment is something that the city can live with. I thought you were real close to getting there. I mean, there's covenants on this from West Palm. There's restrictions that are going to be on it for your own zoning code. You have land use on this. If you change it, there's use restrictions on the land use. So my only hope was to have some mutual understanding between the two that this really shouldn't be that hard. Now, Ms. Hubbard brought an issue up that, in fact, I think it's something that needs to be talked about and discussed.
Right.
We don't fix that today,
Right.
but when it comes back to the city, the port will know that that's one of the issues you got to deal with.
What I do believe,
Go ahead.
as I finish, what I do believe is on the property as we do a presentation on what was intent. This was, from my understanding, it was in 2002
Yeah.
of this
Yeah.
presentation that was supposed to happen.
Yeah, they're just trying to give some context to where the
But
property
is that the
was.
2002 presentation?
That actually is an...
Around 6 or 7.
Right. So
So-
if we're going to televise this and have a public meeting, I think it's only proper if we're going to do a presentation that we give all the information from 2002 and how we got to 2006. Because my colleagues, we have a new colleague here, she need to have understand historically, truthfully about what's happening. Because we're going to be held responsible with understanding, hey, 2006 this was presented, but what happened in 2002? Why wasn't that presented before both governing bodies so we can all move in one accord? While we do want to support the land use, we got to make sure that we have all the information. I'm not against it. I understand it, but I've been here for 5 years. But with the respect of
That's
my
a-
colleagues, it's on the property. They understand what happened in 2002.
Okay.
If I can, I'd just like to take 2 minutes to answer Ms. Hubbard's statement. The idea that you mentioned, I'm not sure if it's
It's
the idea
not
that you
on.
mentioned has been discussed with a friend of the port and very limited number of port employees. We have yet to really fully analyze it. I can tell you that that's just not going to happen next week. We have contractual obligations. The idea, and I'll make it short, is just cut across 11th, go all the way out west, and use one of the streets to come down to 10th, and then have a road that parallels the track. And therefore, you can make a right-hand turn onto MLK or coming back the other way. But again, that has not been vetted. We have not talked about it at length. And if it were to happen, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, starting with a traffic light at 11th. So that's, but again, please, what we're here for is, as Mr. Bush has mentioned, it's the annex.
But, yeah. Hey,
Could you explain, the annex property we're talking about is at the southern end of the port, next to the wall that divides West Palm Beach from the port.
Yes.
None of that property, it's all contiguous within the port. So you're talking about changing land use for land that's in the port so that we can make use of it. It doesn't affect neighborhoods. It doesn't, there are no residents. The only adjacent property is the wall on one side and the port on the other.
That's
So,
okay.
I guess one of the things I would like to know is, this has taken a very long time, so there must be concerns. What are they? I don't understand what the concerns could be. I mean, if it was next to a neighborhood, if it was next to a school, all these things I would understand. But it's not. It's within the southern end of the port. And it's not, I just don't understand what the concern is. It seems like of all the things we have had to process, it seems like this should have been one of the easiest. I wish something like this would come, my boss is a county commissioner. I would love this to come before our zoning department. This would be easy.
I think this whole thing was to share what the issues were. I know what you're saying. I think Ms. Hubbard brought up a point about access through 11th Street, which is a fair issue to bring up, so you understand. While it may be kind of related to this, there's the core issue of the land use. And that's something I think the city needs to consider. Was it first reading you had already?
Yes.
And you came back here to see if there was anything else that was bothering either of you, the port or the city. And So I think that issue Ms. Hubbard brought up is something to be continued.
Mr. Busher.
This is important. Yes.
So I would like to hear what are the issues. If there's anyone from planning and zoning, city manager, what are our issues on the city side?
That'd be good. Yeah, are we close? Are we?
Thanks. Sure, I'll go up there.
Come on up. It's 6:39, so
I'll be very quick. My name is Jeff Gagnon. I'm the Acting Director of Development Services for the city. First of all, thank you all for hosting us tonight. It's appreciated. This item, from our technical standpoint, we really don't have any outstanding issues. The project itself, it's associated with a land use amendment, a zoning amendment, a site plan approval, and a plat. We did spend a lot of time, and there was intergovernmental meetings with the city of West Palm Beach, the port staff, and Riviera Beach, especially being that the adjacent neighborhood to the south is single-family residential in West Palm Beach. So there are restrictions on the deed itself. There are restrictions on the site plan as far as how that property can be used in the future. So a lot of those comments and concerns have been satisfied. And just, if I may, I think what Councilman Hubbard was saying is just the promise that was made a long, long time ago that I think was by a different group of individuals that is no longer present. I think it just needs to be contemplated, but it doesn't directly impact this project moving forward at this time.
Yeah, may I comment? Yeah. Thank you. Wayne Richards. I was on the commission back in 2002, and I love real estate land use work. And I recall the port aggressively joined FDOT in the attempt to get the at-grade crossing. FEC understandably fights against additional at-grade crossings. We know what happens at grade crossings. FDOT gave up. We gave up. And at one point we were looking, and I remember Councilman Liz Wade was very active in this. And when we looked at what could be done, the amount of homes that it would take to fly over was unreasonable. She said, heck no, and it made sense. So the port wanted an at-grade crossing. We could not get it. It's been dead for 16 years. We simply want to use the property to the south. And to hold that hostage may not be fair. I said it. I'm old. Okay. So what we want to work with the city on all issues. And there are quite a few issues we can work together. That's all. Thank you.
Suburb.
Thank you. One, my intent was not to say that we were holding it hostage. What my intent was and still is this. While we change council and commissions every 2 to 3 years throughout the city, we don't go back and change everything that one person has done, but sometimes we have to. While we're talking about something that is monumental and substantial to the city and to the residents of the city, we know that it was no direct cause of the port, and I know that the port did everything within their power to help us get that access. But what we need still is the access. And and for us to have the access, I think we were very patient. We waited. We knew that we were going to, and that we needed we needed the access, and we know that we do need the light there. But what we have to come up with, and as he said, it was going to take a long time for us to get the road. But the time that we have been waiting, as has been pointed out so many times, that's the time that we should have been making other means for us to access the road. So this is what I'm saying. It's been dead for 16 years. No, it shouldn't have been dead for 16 years. We should have been active, since you could not provide us with the 105
the access
crossing.
to the 105. Yeah.
that we have to, and it's not something to be petty or just holding it hostage. What I'm saying is we need to genuinely and seriously understand what it means to the city of Riviera Beach that we have access to that, and we can't just give up and give it up without talking about it.
No, I think that's fair. You want to say
If I
something?
may.
Because I haven't heard anybody say no, Ms. Hubbard, not to talk about it.
So I think the answer lies with the MPO, really. And I got one of the things, I'm not sure this is in your package, but I can provide this later. But the MPO did this study. Now the question is really, do you need the access? That's really the question. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I really do. It almost has nothing to do with the annex property because we know we can't get across at grade on the annex property, but your point, Ms. Hubbard, is where else can we do it?
Right.
Right. And the MPO, if I can put my hands on it, here it is. So the MPO, back in 2013, I guess, 2011 actually, I believe it was. They when they had these studies going on between 2003 and 2011, before the DOT decided they were going to surplus the property, the MPO did the studies, and I think we've talked about that,
yes.
The flyover and so forth. But the MPO, this is the staff I'm looking at. It says the MPO's Central East Palm Beach mobility study, and that was the study we're talking about, indicated that the connector did not provide much relief to the other congested roadway lengths in the area. So that's really why the MPO saw fit to take it off. And, I think that if there's any thought of doing anything else, it really settles with the MPO because the MPO, I'm sure you know, they're kind of they're the agency that decides what roads are going to get built in Palm Beach County. And Mike knows better than I because he worked with Treasure Coast.
I would suggest to you, though, that the city's on the MPO.
I am.
And they could actually, there's no reason why the city can't work with the port on this issue, and that's what I'm going to chalk this up to. That's
Absolutely
an issue that
not.
has to be worked on. It should be looked
Absolutely.
at. Pardon? I got to finish. We got to finish this.
Yeah, but this one answer. Go ahead.
Well, and there's one other thing that I didn't mention is we did 13th Street after all this kind of fell apart. The port, we actually did the condemnation on 13th Street. Didn't we? Yeah. So, the port has, tried to improve the access from west to east and east to west in light of that. So, let's put that in the mix, too. That's what I would say.
Okay, fair. Very
That's fair.
fair.
All right. So I haven't heard anybody say anything that would preclude the city from positively looking at the annexation and the land use change. Can we at least agree that we've heard nothing, no fatal flaws, none of that? Ms. Hubbard came up with an issue that I think the port and the city can work on. Local access between 11th and President Baraka. I know you have 13, but you got to be fair. Ms. Hubbard, I think, is bringing up an issue she wants to work with you on. So, and that's how I'm going to leave it. If there isn't anything more on that, because I think, like you said, this should be easy.
Can I just add something to?
Okay.
The port has a presence on it's the TPA now, by the way. They changed the name.
Yeah, they keep changing their name.
Right. So, right. So now it's a TPA. Anyway, I don't think the port, and I'm not speaking for all the commissioners, but I represent the port on the TPA. We would be probably more than happy to support the city if they want to push this issue with the TPA.
That's good.
For your, if that would help.
They're your staff, and that's the board you work with, so you can work with them. I'm going to quickly move into interlocal agreement unless there's any more questions. Thank you, Commissioner Waldron.
Public cards?
At the end. I'm going to give a very brief presentation again, and thank you for the opportunity to reintroduce this idea, the interlocal agreement. Reintroduce an idea that I guess to update the old 1996 interlocal agreement. I mean, the last time these two boards met, they spent probably 3 or 4 hours on this issue, and that was on June 9th, and the subject was the interlocal. It was prompted by, the meeting was actually prompted by some legal and regulatory wrangling between the port and the city related to some zoning issues, business licensing, uses at the port, permitting, site plan approvals, building inspections, stormwater issues. All of these issues were discussed at length on June 9th, 2015. And there were 2 conclusions that came out of that meeting, and I think they were pretty important. The general notion was for both sides that to keep the interlocal agreement, but they wanted it updated. You know, I mean, everybody at the meeting wanted to facilitate redevelopment of the port for economic reasons and for all the reasons that you're neighbors. A lot's changed in the last 20 years. Some topics were no longer valid. Some folks added topics at that meeting. But it was time to sort of reset this relationship between the port and the city. And the interlocal agreement wasn't to usurp anybody's policies, anybody's land use, anybody's plans or anything like that. But what it really was is to establish a framework of how your guys are going to behave, basically, on all those issues. There was a lot of staff has come and gone. A lot of elected officials have come and gone since 2015. But the second big thing that it established was a framework for the revised interlocal agreement. It would look similar to the old one, but there were some big things that were discussed related to the update of the new agreement, land use and zoning. I mean, there was a suggestion, and it's in the interlocal, that a special port zoning district be established so that the port would be treated as a port, not just another industrial park out west. There's special uses. It clarified, and I think it needed some real clarification, site plan approvals, permitting, business licensing, and fees, because all of those were very contentious issues back in 2015, and they still may be, about who's doing that, who has the authority to do that. Again, a reset was needed. Employment, goods and services, that would just be restated because it's a local first preference. It clarified stormwater utility fees and liability. I mean, that was just a subject that was added to the agreement. Provision of municipal services, water, sewer, police, and fire. Port expansion. I mean, this caused a lot of contention during the meeting, but it recognized the port annex property to the south, the thing we just talked about, the piece of property we just talked about. Recognizes potential for port parking in the southwest corner of 11th Street and US 1. It examined port expansion north to 11th Street and west of US 1. I mean, there were provisions for that under consent of the city, under the new Port Overlay Zoning District, and consistent with the city's land use and port-based zoning code, which they had just adopted recently, which frankly would, whether it's the port or any other industrial user, would control the form and function of those land uses without discriminating it being the port or some other industrial user. There is mutual and regular communication, sort of representation that we do this at least once a year. Like I said, that was 3 years ago, but it's okay, we're back. And notification that the city land use of zoning changes south of 13th. So the port would know what was going on, things that would affect it. There was a landscaping plan for the port that was suggested, and it's part of the interlocal, that would have to be done. And there was a sunset provision that was added. So every 10 years we go back and revisit the interlocal, not wait 20 years next time. So all of these things happened over the last 3 years, and the report was drafted. Actually, the new interlocal was drafted shortly after the June 9th, and it was provided to the city and the port in September. We had one meeting with city staff, the city administrator, the city planning and zoning director, and we had one meeting with and the city's attorney, and one meeting with Manny and his staff. And then everything stopped. We got busy on doing other things, and the work stopped. Now, I know some of you folks believe that that updating and challenging ourselves to update an agreement is a good idea. and memorializing how we behave with one another, how we treat each other on these issues is very important to some. But I need to know what all of you think. And before we even think about moving forward with the process, and again, I'm not talking about redoing everything, but restarting the process so that the two staffs, Greg, Larry, Manny, everybody else on staff, and everybody on the Riviera Beach side, has a chance at least to review what the revised interlocal agreement, because I got to tell you, I don't think anybody's really paid any attention to it or looked at it, because we got one meeting out of the way and then we stopped. So I'll ask you this question. Does everybody believe that updating the interlocal agreement is a good idea? And I think that's a conversation you need to have. So before you do anything else. You got to push that top button.
Yeah, I think before we decide whether or not an interlocal agreement is a good thing, the first one, times have changed immensely.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of regulations coming out of Tallahassee now that weren't involved when we did the first one. So that's the first thing we have to look at. When we first did the first interlocal agreement, it basically came up because we were having a lot of trouble getting a lot of our planning and zoning approved. And so we went to the city and we said, well, let's have this interlocal agreement. And it was fair to both sides at the time. But that's because we had a lot of construction going on at the time, and I think that was one of the main reasons why we did it. I'm not against it, but I think we need to have meetings with staff to see if we can do another one and see what benefits would come about from it.
Okay, that's fair. Anybody else would like to comment?
Well, it seems to me that it's always a good idea to have conversation and to have that dialogue about why it's important. I hear what you're saying. Maybe Tallahassee has made it a moot point, but on the other hand, we don't know that until we have the dialogue about it. So I'm in favor of having the dialogue.
Mr. Boucher? I think that each side, we both can look at the interlocal agreement. See, we should each see what changes we want to make, and maybe when we come back together, we can discuss those. And if we find that we're in agreement with doing so, then we can discuss, possibly going forward. But maybe you guys can workshop it section by section and see what. How the changes would benefit, and then we would do the same, and then we could come back together to discuss those changes.
Okay.
Let's
go to this side and then back to this side. Who is it? Wayne or Catherine?
This is Catherine.
No, I know. I thought you were reaching for the mic. Sorry. I know, Wayne.
There's no expiration date on this agreement, or is there?
No expiration on the current agreement. It's still in force. The 1996 agreement is still there.
So my only suggestion then is that if we
it's
do
not
agree
really.
Well,
yeah, the 1996 is long dead. So when you say it's still there, I mean it's still, but no one follows.
Well, if no one's following it,
exactly.
That's one thing. But the agreement is still. It hasn't terminated. It hasn't self-terminated.
Well, that might be true, but no one's been following it. The city hasn't. We haven't. So we need a new one or an update.
Some type of baseline at least to work from. And I would just suggest that if we do have a conversation, decide to have meetings that we, at this meeting, if possible, set a timeline on that so we don't go through another 3 years.
I agree.
Okay. Let me just explain where the update came from. I took the old agreement as the baseline, subtracted everything out at the workshop that everybody didn't think was needed, and added everything in that people wanted to be in there. So that was the baseline. So.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
The
Chair.
only thing I want to interject is just that I cannot foresee that we can just have another meeting and go through all this. I think it's going to take section by section, meeting by meeting, to discuss a lot of these issues. I don't think it's just going to be, we just have one meeting, discuss and come up with some ideas. I think it's going to take several meetings through maybe a year or so, or maybe 6. It's going to be at least a year before we can even come up with a document. That's if we're going to do it right And then our attorneys need to go back and research, because we place something in the document, it might not even be relevant or even used anymore in Tallahassee. So it's going to take time to do this, and we have to work together diligently and over months and periods of time. That's all I want to say.
One more comment, and then we need to close and take public comment. So
I'm just going to be extremely brief. I support what everyone stated, and specifically Commissioner Waldron. We have to make a commitment now, after public comment, on some dates when we're going to meet. I mean, that's the biggest issue we had. We sat down, we had comments, we discussed it. We never got a hard date. We went back and forth with staff, but we all in the room today to say we are committed to meeting and start putting some dates, potential dates that staff can bring back later. But we in this room, before we leave today, we need to say we're committed to actually meeting. So when these meetings come, we must commit to finding a way to make it work and move forward. We're just looking at what's been changed, what's been modified from the staff level on our end. So when we come back, we all better prepared to have a warming discussion on how we're going to work together.
if what I heard, and I heard Ms. Hubbard, if what I heard her say correctly, if I listened properly, is that an opportunity, there needs to be an opportunity to take the draft, share it with the port staff and their legal counsel and everybody else, and get some feedback from them on it. Share it with the city staff, get some feedback with the city on it. Go through it line by line, and then maybe the staffs get back together and just chat with each other about it. Before you guys come back as a group, I mean, I think your staffs need to be satisfied that we've done everything we could to recreate an updated agreement that's going to be meaningful. You know, it's a 10-year sunset thing. So I just would ask, with your permission, I'd be happy just to do that. I'd love the opportunity to go through with each of your staffs what's in that draft. And then they can take it and work together on it. So I don't know if I can get an amen to that or not, but I'm happy to do it. All right? So, and then the staffs, if you'd like them to work on it, until they say uncle, you know, and they'll report back to you on it. So can we try that?
Yep.
And
That's good.
And then you guys, we'll get you all back together again when they feel comfortable that they got something you can, you know, sink your teeth into.
Michael, that makes sense to me, and I see many of us on both sides shaking in affirmation. I'd suggest you put some rough timing on it. In other words, are you suggesting 4, 8, or 12, or 16 weeks for this first draft or something? Let's not leave it wide open, and then it's 3 years.
Right.
So I'd suggest you add that today as a goal.
Do you want to take public comment? Think about that.
I'm going to always say yes to public comment.
Well, I know, but don't leave, because we can. I'd like a chance to talk with both the staffs and see what a reasonable time, because everybody's busy, and I just want to make sure that they can. I could give you a date, but then they're all going to look at me and shoot me. So I don't have the cards. Who has the cards? So. All right. Well, we're not. It's 7:02. Forgive me.
Mr. Ward, you gave us several. We have 2 items that we discussed today, and so I will take the first one, the annex one. You have 3 minutes to discuss the annex property. Then you will have 3 minutes to discuss the interlocal agreement. Thank you, sir. 3 minutes,
Mr.
sir.
Cleary would like to go first. Would you take him?
Words got a long mouth.
Oh, I didn't see your card. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. If you can, please. And you are going to talk on the annex.
Yeah. My name's John Cleary. I'm president of Palmer Corporation. I own 301 10th Street and Associates, located at 301 West 11th Street. And Larry Smith, that's good what you said. I've been here probably as long as you then, maybe, because I remember the Chinese restaurant and the trailer park too. But there's 3 sides to every story. And what is it? M equals E something squared or whatever. And I'm not against the annexation, but there's going to be a reaction equal and opposite to that annexation. And everybody's talking about 2008, 2015, 2000 ever. We've got to go back to 2002, 1990 something, to where the overpass was going over 11th Street and hooking up on the north side of US 1. The annex section was the second pick. I was getting eminent domain by the DOT for that property. It kind of didn't go through. Then the school board came in, and they were going to eminent domain me on that same property. And I went ahead and bought a piece on 831 West 13th Court. And Mayor Masters went to the DOT and gave my property to the DOT because they bought all the property on the south side of Martin Luther King for drainage ponds. And they couldn't have it, which I'll agree with them, the children in the neighborhood and everything, and maybe a drowning thing. But they went ahead and eminent domain me. Now, I don't know if any of you ever been through eminent domain. It's not very fair. And they did it in 2005 when the values were worse than the Depression. Now, my problem is I'm 65 years old now, and I worked through all this, and I think this is going to happen to me again. Because if you don't, which you can't use that, you're going to have to get some road through like Miss Hubbard wants through, and you're going to come right through 10th and 11th Street, and I own from 10th to 11th Street. So my problem is, I'd like an exit plan. One day I'd like to retire. I don't work for the government. I don't have a pension program. I work for myself. And I don't want to wait for the government to tell me what the value of my property is based on somebody else's is. And then to make things worse, when they took all the property over there, I got $250,000 less than everybody else, same size property, wrong year. So I just know there's going to be a reaction from this decision, which the decision is fine. It only makes sense. The land is no good to anybody but the port right now. But you do anything and you do your interlogical agreement with the city or whatever, the city can turn around and say, well, go ahead and take all the way to 13th Street. And nobody cares about me, but I know. But I've worked my whole life to try to have something when I retire, and I don't want to lose that. And that's my only problem with what you guys are doing is, I don't want to get into the whole, Manny knows a lot about it, but I don't want to get the whole thing. But, people anticipate what you have and where you're going. And you make decisions, and then somebody changes it to where, we're not going to do that. But in the whole time, what are you supposed to do? And they did have a plan, and Ward will show you the drawings and everything. And it was coming right across my property, and that came when they did the Sky Pass and everything. And I've been here my whole life. So if you want to know something about West Palm, Riviera Beach, Key West, Fort Myers, or Jacksonville, I can tell you. In the Port of Palm Beach. Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Enright, let me just correct the previous speaker. That was Mayor Brown he was talking about, the eminent domain mayor, not Mayor Masters.
Oh, it was you? I'm sorry. Hey, wait a minute. I want to apologize on record to Mayor Masters. That was Mr. Brown then?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. It was. All right. I'm getting old, man.
Gerald Ward, 2135 Broadway. Obviously, your most important property owner could not be here tonight. Your neighbor to the north and to the west of this property is in British Columbia playing games with a boat or something. So he has implored me to come to at least speak on the issue. That's Martin E. Murphy of Cracker Boy and Jamco and the Murphy companies. Number two, I did have a handout for each of the councils and the port board so that you can see there's particular information. And I will tell you that Chair Enright started it off with 13th Street Co-op, and she talked about the port and Riviera Beach, but Palm Beach County was a one-third player and financing partner of that agreement for 13th Street. So it is important that other governments need to be involved in any decision to be made. The port started out in the 90s with a Slip 3 expansion. They were starting to move and go. Actually, Sonny Duran produced a great plan for going forward. The SkyPass came in, and out of that came the 13th Street agreement for improvements there. Opal's office building followed, but guess what? The agreement, the interlocal agreement, facilitated cooperation between the port and the city of Riviera Beach. And in this document in 1995, the port put that into their comprehensive plan. And although Mr. Sicklin gets excited about the time it takes, it took until March of 1997 to get adopted, a year and a half or so. So that was great. 7 years later in your package, you'll see a motion to intervene where Mr. Picken nicely says that the port did agree that the reconnection of US 1 to State Road 710 west of Old Dixie was an important issue and was one of the prime parts of the comprehensive plan even at that time. So the city was represented in 1995-96 that if we gave up the only 4-lane section of State Road 710 from US 1, State Road 5, west to Old Dixie, now President Obama, that you would have a replacement. Now, my packet goes on, and by the way, it's not a distraction by Ms. Hubbard, Michael, because well, no, I had three minutes twice. Remember?
I know, but
okay, I'm going through the two subjects so that we together. Okay. But Ms. Hubbard is absolutely correct, and there is a motion second without objection of this board of the City of Riviera Beach that you do not get approval of the second reading until we come back with an interlocal agreement discussion. And there's nothing wrong with that because you can say that the port proceeded well with a number of major projects. $31 million SkyPass. That's could never be done for that money today. The office building and cruise terminal you're standing in. All of these things were cooperatively worked under an interlocal agreement. And you need to get some physical document back together. So I would also comment that the interlocal agreement needs to produce usage of the $80+ million federal appropriations, which is going to run out in 2022. I have given you a two-color enclosures. The first is that the port is the 11th out of the 14 deepwater ports in spending capital projects. You're not budgeting. Your next agenda on Thursday has a manager's report that he has 5 projects that he considers to be the important projects. None of those give lots of progress to the port. There is the slip number 2 expansion, which would then improve navigation. A westward of the SkyPass. We designed the SkyPass so that we can have the water channel go west, and that's in your packet, a depiction of that, in a first phase. That's not all that can be done to give this port much more room for berthing a shallower drafted vessel, 15 feet, say, 18 feet. The current usage of berth 1 is certainly not what you want to have in a port. That's a 25-foot basin extension of 1975, and it needs to be used for ships, not for just mega yachts. You can put the smaller drafted ships and vessels to the west and be much more accommodating to the biggest production of dollars here, which is tropical. You need to have them with readily available berthing because they produce more economy for the overall area probably than the two ferries are to Freeport right now in terms of area-wide economy. It may be great for the port. We need to get the parking garage, which I have the parking garage study of 2014. You've got options of 800 to 1,000 numbers of ships. Of parking spaces. All this is been sort of planned and put on the shelf here. It's time to put it into the interlocal agreement, set a date within 4 weeks or maybe up of 6 weeks. Certainly nothing like 3 or 4 months. That's what caused the 3-year delay.
Some of you may know that Mr. Ward and us, me, don't agree about 99% of the things that he's always planning and expanding. I have heard his ideas. You can give me 3 minutes. I'll get out of here. I have heard his idea of putting going way out west and dredging, and you're talking about plans that are not practical. He's a great engineer, believe me. He's very smart. I really respect Ward, but sometimes he gets under my skin. And the reason for that is he is not practical. With all due respect to him, he has no clue of what it is to run a port. He has a lot of plans, and that's fine. That's great. We need planners. We have a planner. But for him to walk into a room like this and have our friends walk out with a certain idea that we're not doing what we're supposed to, that we're the 11th out of 14, guess what? We're the 3rd highest producing revenue per acre in all the 14 ports in the Florida. But that doesn't get mentioned. That's an inconvenient truth. So what you're hearing from me is frustration more than anything else. But I promise you, I will still say hello to Mr. Ward. Sometimes he doesn't shake my hand. Sometimes he does. I'll give him that. And one day we'll probably, I hope, we'll go out there and have some lunch. But those ideas of his are not practical for this port. Thank you, folks.
I just want to make a comment. You want to go on to the next person?
Is there other public comments, or is that?
I have one more by. Did you have another comment, gentlemen, sir? You have another comment, or you
my only one. I kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I addressed most everything, but my big issue is the city can do whatever it wants. I mean, I was here when the main road came through, and they took Avenue E from us, and they took 9th Street from us.
Don't worry.
All right. No, but I've even talked to Manny way back in the days about can't take any more streets, and we got a curve we got to go up, and it's hard to get in and out and everything now, and we just don't want to. If you come through, that's fine. Just buy me out and give me a lot of money. That's all. Let me go away. Maybe I'll go take a vacation. But what I'm saying is I don't want to be surprised. Ward. Ward is a pain, and he's a pain to me, and that's how he ended up here. He was just, he got me here, and I'm glad I came. And everybody's nice, but you can work these things out. It's the surprises that hurt the common person that's out there. You don't want to just all of a sudden find out from a letter from a judge, from an attorney that says, "Okay, you're done," And you go, well, wait a minute. You go, oh, no, you ran out of time. You didn't respond in a timely fashion. And you find out they're sending the letter to someplace you haven't lived for 10 years. And then, then it's all just what it is, It's 2 or 3 people arguing and a judge sitting there going to make up his mind on what's going on. Or 5 people that you don't even know that never worked a day of their life in the field you're doing and are going to go ahead and make judgment on what you're supposed to get. And basically, that's all I want to say. Thank you.
There's one letter I need to read into the record. If you don't mind, I'll quick.
This letter is from Marty Murphy, 1071 Grand Bahama Lane, Riviera Beach, Florida. I'm unable to attend. The letter is dated June 6, 2018. I'm unable to attend. The subject meeting is scheduled. Thank you for presenting my comments pertaining to item number 105 Broadway. The city closed Port Road to traffic and gave it to the Port of Palm Beach in order to build the new Sky Pass. For this closure, the Port of Palm Beach and FDOT agreed to build a new east-west connector road at 105 Broadway, which was condemned and purchased by DOT for this purpose as exhibited. Attached are exhibits including copies of my prior statements concerning this item as follows: a 4/18/18 memo to file objecting to agenda item 19, 20, and 22 presented at the City Council meeting, a 1/28/13 objection letter to Palm Beach County Master Plan update, and a 8/23/12 objection letter to Port of Palm Beach plus exhibits. In conclusion, I ask that you table this agenda item until arrangements can be made to reopen Port Road or construct the connector road as it was planned in 1995. Item 4, interlocal agreement between the port and the city. I am the north adjoining property owner to the port, Cracker Boy Marine. I have always attended and participated in many public workshops for these interlocal agreements, and I'm concerned about what changes will be discussed. Please read into the record my current concerns and attach previous objection letters and notes. I'll turn this into the chair.
Can you hear me? Yes. One, Gary, I just wanted to thank you. We need visionaries, and you're a visionary. You frequently come all the way from Key West to these meetings. I appreciate it immensely. Manuel is a Knoll, so, you got to take that with a grain of salt. And I also just wanted to say if North Korea and the United States could reach an agreement in short order, hopefully it will be meaningful. I'm sure Riviera Beach and the Port of Palm Beach can resolve all these differences, and I look forward to helping any way I can. Thank you.
All right. Well, look, I had a chance to talk to each of your staffs, and let me tell you, please give me an opportunity to chat with Karen and Jeff. They have not even seen they're all new faces. They haven't even seen the draft, so please just give me a minute. I mean, Greg's probably seen it 10 times and wants to tear it up and redo it. But so he's a little more prepared. So, but they have not had a chance to look at it. So just give me a chance before we give you a date certain. Just please give me a chance to be fair to the city staff on that one. Trying to think, I had something. So I want to walk away from here with two things. I want to understand that the second reading on the 105 annex is that on or off? You guys, is that something you can agree to go with?
What do you mean?
Well, there's a second reading that has to happen of the 105 Broadway property, and so the point of all this. Part of the point of all this was to get some understanding that that's something that at least the city would consider the second reading.
Okay, so with the second reading,
not approving it, just the second reading.
The second reading approves it. The second reading approves it.
Okay.
So in there has to be a discussion or consideration about the things that we talked about today, and as you said, they're worth considering. And but prior to the second reading, I don't know if we're going to get together or before then or what, but we have to discuss the issues that are going to affect us. So I know everybody was nodding yes. The second reading approves the document.
May I say something?
Sure.
Commissioner, is it on? Commissioner. Councilwoman Hubbard, we're only talking about the annex property.
I know what we're talking about.
Jurisdiction of the port, and it belongs now. It is to the port. The only thing we're asking the city council, is to change the land use. Because no matter if you decide to take a street up 11th Street or whatever you do, It has nothing to do with that little strip of land. That is I'm with Commissioner Payne MacArthur. That's something totally different. So it's within the boundary of the Port of Palm Beach. We're not able to use that parcel at all until the land use is changed. That's the only thing we're asking. You can put roads everywhere you want, take millions of dollars and build how many streets you want. You have to receive money and grants. We're only asking to use that property that's just out there. We can be receiving revenue from it, other things. So this has nothing to do with the interlocal agreement. We will then take how long it's going to take, how many months, and work together on the agreement. This is something we're only asking to change the land use. And your own city has said it has gone through all the channels, and they have no problem with it. In the department, the young gentleman said it. So I don't understand. I'm beginning to think, hey, are we being held hostage? I hate to say it like that.
I don't care that you say it like that.
But this is not right. This is wrong.
Okay, Mr. Lucia, may I?
Yeah.
I'm not offended by that you say that you're beginning to feel that we are that statement means that you're being held hostage. I stated earlier that that is definitely not my intention, and I'm sorry that for the hour and a half that we're set here, you're still laboring under the assumption that I don't understand that we're talking about the annexation of the property at the south end of the bridge next to West Palm Beach, and the fact that it is port property, and you're talking about the land use changes. I understand that clearly, and I think everybody in here understands that. I get that, but my point was still my point. And with no disrespect, I thought that we had come to an understanding that, well, maybe not an understanding and not even an agreement, but at least the acknowledgement of the fact that the discussion needs to be had about access. I also acknowledge the fact that the 13th Street improvement that you did provided some access. So I thought we were at least there, but it seems that the last hour and a half have left you baffled to the fact that I understand exactly what we're talking about, but I'm not asking you to change your position, but I'm asking you to hear my point. That's all that I'm saying.
Ms. Hubbard, I think you made that point, and I think we all agreed on that. But the issue, as Ms. Enright and others have said, is holding one to the other. That would be like us saying we're not going to give any more grants on, fire rescue or public safety to the city until you approve that's not right. We're not going to do that. They shouldn't be tied together. You made your point. We're going to address that. It has to be addressed, hopefully in both comp plans and in our interlocal agreement. But I have to agree with Chairwoman Enright that the two should not be tied together. You should not say, I'm not going to do second reading. Doing what you're proposing on the access, that's going to take a long time. How long are we going to hold up the change in land use?
TD?
Anyway, I'm sorry.
With all due respect to the comments, the temperature is not about getting what you want. As we read the agenda, it just said presentations on both items. It didn't say present and make a decision. To all respect. Now, we do want to work well together, but when you make those comments because you didn't get what you came prepared to do, that's unfair to the entire meeting. We all came prepared with information with the understanding that we're going to expedite the next meeting to make a series of decisions, right? Now, if you came to this meeting to make a decision on this item, then that should have been said in the very beginning. My intent, now I support the annexation with the understanding that staff reviews it with all the historical things that happened since 1996 all the way up until now, and the impact on the changes moving forward. If it says what you all have stated, then I support it. If there's some changes, some modifications that we're not aware of that hasn't been presented in this meeting, then we have another issue to address. But I just want to make sure our staff can sit down, convey, get together, and get with the entire council and make sure everybody understands what's been said is what it is. But if it's not, we need to be in position to say, hey, no, that's not necessarily true, or, hey, we can't move forward. What they're stating is correct. And that's all I'm stating. That's all.
Let me just try this so I understand that what I heard was that related to Ms. Hubbard's comment, related to Ms. Waldron's comment, and related to commitments on both sides, that they would go ahead and take this issue seriously. They came up with additional port access. They would also, you guys together would work with the TPA and try and get this done. So I can't speak for anybody else on the board, and that'll just happen. Whatever happens, happens. You'll have to decide as a board what you want to do.
Mike, I do have a question.
But that's my understanding of how we left this, and that the second reading, the next hearing, wouldn't be held up because of this. So that was my understanding. So.
Man, Mr. Ward's been consistent. Marty Murphy's been consistent in bringing this up. At the port, we have our 5-year and our 10-year plans. I can't ask your staff, it's not appropriate, but is this something that the city has in your master plan? Are you actively pushing this to the TPA? Is this something you voted on and you're pushing and we don't know about it? Because if it is, we want to get behind it. But if you're not talking about it, you're not voting on it on your side, then we don't know about it. You don't have to answer, maybe it's rhetorical. But if it's something you're pushing, you're working on it, you're asking the TPA to do, let us know. We'll assist you.
Well, I already heard a commitment to do that.
But I'm saying I don't know that the council wants it. I don't have to know, but I'm not sure they voted. I'm not sure they talk about it. If they are, let's get behind them.
Well, I heard that commitment from you, and that I thought was fine.
Okay.
So
I guess they decided.
So let's stop there and understand that I believe there's some understanding here about how we're going to move forward with this. No one's going to try and burn anybody else on this deal. And we're going to seriously consider that together through the TPA. You're going to seriously consider the additional port access. So that was my understanding. Let's just leave it like that. The interlocal agreement, forgive me, I'll have to get back to you because I don't think it's fair to the city staff. They haven't seen the document yet. They haven't commented on it. They haven't tried to edit it yet. Everybody who did is gone. So, okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Busher.
Sure.
I do believe we have time to workshop this item before it comes before us, so we can hash a lot of those issues out. So the way things are looking now, it's going to be another month or two before you even get before us anyway, because the next meeting is next week, so you're not making that meeting. So that gives us time to put together a workshop before we even. So we have time to get to where we need to be.
Yep.
So just understand that as we leave this meeting, it's been very clear, and Ms. Waldron has set the tone, as she has been listening very openly to Councilperson Hubbard, and they both agreed to be open to everyone's issues, not stop anything. So if you look at the time, the way the meetings are structured with the city and you guys' schedules, everything's kind of lying in place for us to have our workshop and be prepared for whenever it comes before us anyway, which won't be potentially until to sometime in July. So.
So what is the timeline we're going to set? I know you wanted to do something before we left.
For the interlocal agreement?
No, we're talking about for the interlocal agreement. Yeah.
It's something different. So I don't want to speak for the city staff because I have not had a chance to review it. I just don't think it was fair. I mean, Greg's had a lot of chances to look at it. So I want to talk with Karen. I want to talk with Jeff and others about what they think they physically can do to get through that. And then the point is, once they figure out what they would like to see in the draft, I need both staffs to get together. And that's going to take a little bit of time. And basically hash stuff out and see if they can't come up with an agreement that they can bring back to you and together and say, hey, we're happy with this. What do you think as board members of the agreement? So,
well, I think as a board we do need to try to come up with a conversation and a timeline for our staff, because I don't want it to linger. We have a lot of things going on, so I can just see that kind of falling by the wayside. So at some point we do need to address that issue and make sure that it happens.
I agree. I'd like to see it put on an agenda so we can know that we're going to move forward.
Well, that's something your staff can do once they have
Review
gone
the
through the
document.
draft. Pardon?
Yeah, like you said.
Yeah,
once
once they get
review
through
it,
the document, I mean, you can agenda it for your board and say, hey, here's the timeline for us.
Set up a workshop.
Yeah, and but we need to work with the port on it and get together with them and bring back a draft that all of you would, be proud of. So.
Absolutely.
So, okay. I mean, are we?
Thank you for having us.
Thank you again for having us. Appreciate
Thank you.
the opportunity.
Thank you for hanging in there.
Thank you.